Chapter 39. End of an Era. They were only a few hours removed from reaching Rokan, the capital city of Malachi. The sun was already meandering toward the sky, casting a blanket of dreamlike hues over the land that made even the emptiness of the Doran seem like a colourful paradise in disguise. Marcus wasn't at all in the mood to appreciate the ethereal beauty, however, not after having already spent so many days in what he could only describe as an empty nightmare of tearless sorrow. The Doran had nothing to offer except for sand, and endlessly more sand. So when Cato told him the story about the fabled kingdom of Dor, he absolutely refused to believe the desert that kept trying to bury him inside a tomb of sand had once been a lush utopia of plants, animals, rivers, and lakes. Never to even mind the fantastical rubbish about a mile-high tree that scratched through the clouds and blessed the people of Dor with the ability to manipulate aura. It was the sort of nonsensical gibberish that only proved to Marcus that ingesting someone's knowledge did not automatically equal becoming smarter. Cato could have taken the memories of 85 simple-minded morons for all he knew. While Cato kept on babbling long after everything of importance had already been discussed, Marcus purposefully chose to remain silent, only nodding and humming a few times to reaffirm his existence, in the hope that Cato would get the hint and follow his example. But of course, Cato being Cato, never did shut up. The more he had to listen to Cato's stories, the more he began to wonder why they were even friends at all. He felt so detached from anything that flew out of Cato's mouth. He even developed a profound level of respect for Raven, who had to put up with that prattling on a daily basis. So there was nothing he could do but to keep nodding and humming and to keep listening to Cato's incredulous stories while the rest of their party managed to sleep through it somehow. His mood was further dampened by the fact that he was actually sitting on a goddamn horse. Although he had to admit, if only to himself, that it wasn't half as bad as he thought it would be, and definitely beat the alternative of having to walk another step in this godforsaken hellscape of unreasonable sadness. And yet, a part of him kept wondering if it wouldn't have been better if he just returned to Mengarovi with his tail tucked between his legs, admit his mistake of accepting the arrangement, and pretend none of the past 2 weeks ever happened. But of course, the pride of a bloodthorn would never allow that to happen. Instead, he was riding a chestnut stallion called Chester with a decomposing corpse, wrapped up in the coat he received from Maya for his 23rd birthday, tightly strapped behind him on the horse's back. And as if smelling like a graveyard on a hot summer day wasn't already humiliating enough for a dignified stallion like Chester, the poor thing was made to drag along the severed head of Valise's pet creature on a metal chain that was previously attached to a fellow horse, which happened to be killed by the very person he was being mounted by. Even Marcus felt sorry for Chester and forced himself to pet the horse every now and then, just as Maya had shown him. In the end, they both were victims of the same unfair, twisted river called life. Listening to Cato's mindless drivel was bad. Riding a horse that was perfumed with the stench of death was worse. But what absolutely killed Marcus's mood was having to live through the nightmare of knowing that his sister was blissfully asleep inside Cato's arms. He hated the fact that their scents intertwined as if they had already been together for ages. He didn't even have the heart to look at them, being instantly disgusted by the sight. So he stoically kept his eyes to the front and ignored the romance that was blossoming beside him. The scenery he saw proved to be a welcome distraction. Slowly, but surely, he began to notice that the influence of Doran's desolation was finally coming to an end. The landscape gradually shifted from a monotony of drab beige to a drab beige with occasional stubbles of green. Small critters could be heard skittering through the vegetation with increased regularity. Marcus bore no love for animals, but even he was happy to see increased signs of life around him. In fact, he would much rather be locked inside a small cage with 100 feral cats than to spend another day in the Doran.
"We are almost there,"
Cato said and placed his hand on Maya's thigh to wake her up. Marcus took an obnoxiously deep and audible breath. He had done so well in his attempt to avoid looking at them, but that small, intimate touch was just about enough to squeeze the final drop through his sieve of patience. He turned his head to Cato and Maya with a face made of thunderstorms and acid rain, but they never even acknowledged his existence. He was fully prepared to unleash immeasurable fury upon them, but the look his sister gave Cato was like a ray of light that punched through his brooding clouds. His demeanor instantly softened, perhaps even brightened. He couldn't remember the last time he had seen Maya so happy.
Marcus,
Cato said, and waited until he was acknowledged with a silent flick of the chin.
there is still one important matter we haven't discussed yet.
Marcus groaned and turned his eyes back to the horizon where an intimidating silhouette of an enormous city was starting to take shape in front of a golden sun.
Why wait until now to bring it up?
Cato shrugged.
Everyone seemed tired. I figured it was for the best to let them rest.
A grumpy hum was the only response Marcus had the energy to wring out. Apparently, he wasn't part of everyone. Cato chuckled and turned around to wake up his siblings. Raven and Rain immediately started moaning and groaning about the most trivial matters, but he just smiled and nodded in agreement with pretty much anything they had to say, glad that they were back to their regular selves again. He could barely believe that Raven almost killed Rain by accident, and never would have forgiven himself if he slept through a tragedy of such magnitude. Lucky for all of them, fortune seemed to be on their side for once, and nothing substantial happened, except for Rain getting scared half to death.
I want you all to know something about Valise, or more specifically, her father, Cain Everlong.
The so-called emperor.
Marcus grumbled. Hearing the name immediately made him think of the story his father once told him about the childhood friend who died before he was born.
What about him?
Cain Everlong is the son of Grandmaster Aemon.
The revelation was announced with such nonchalance that no one would be blamed for having missed the significance of the message. They were staring at Cato in shock, however.
Is this another fact you picked up from your parasitic aura?
Marcus asked and shook his head, refusing to believe more of Cato's nonsense.
No, the old man told me after the gathering, a few days before we left for Doriva.
Marcus only responded with a grunt.
How come we have never heard of him before?
Maya asked.
Even Principal Aaron told me that he was Grandmaster Aemon's only child.
Cain Everlong was banished from the realm a long time ago. Supposedly, he had murdered his mother among many other people. All records of him have subsequently been destroyed, effectively erasing him from history and existence.
And what was the reason he told you such a thing? Seems like an odd topic to bring up all of the sudden.
Maya took over the reins from Cato's hands to let him relax for a bit.
Ever since I returned from Aspera, I've been receiving these strange dreams.
Cato said, stretching his arms above his head.
Receiving,
She said.
meaning that someone sent you these dreams.
Is that why you have been acting weird all this time?
Raven said and let out a big yawn.
I knew something was bothering you. At first I thought it was only Master A.
He abruptly swallowed back whatever he was about to say. The sight of Cato and Maya together convinced him not to wake any sleeping demons.
You should have told me,
He said instead.
I really should have.
Cato said with an apologetic chuckle that seemed to catch Marcus, who didn't know Cato as a team player at all, by surprise.
But I wasn't aware something strange was going on until it was already too late.
So what happens in your dreams?
Rain asked, still half sleeping. She started collecting dew from the increasingly dense growth of vegetation with her aura, and carefully guided the droplets into her flask.
What does this have to do with Cain Everlong?
Excellent question, Rain Knight.
Marcus knew that saying her name in full was enough to redden her cheeks. He had grown rather fond of the scrawny blonde ever since she saved his life, and even began to treat her as his substitute sister, seeing how his actual sister seemed to have erased him from her life. Cato arched an eyebrow and brushed a strand of hair behind Maya's ear with a middle finger.
Will you just get on with your fucking story already, man?
The outburst brought a fleeting smile to Cato's face. Getting under Marcus's skin was probably one of his favourite pastimes, but even that wasn't enough to prevent the gloom from taking over his demeanour when he was forced to think about his dreams.
It happened 7 times over the course of 2 weeks. They all told the same story, but each time in a different setting. I would see a boy and a girl. They were identical twins with skin as white as untouched snow, hair as silver as the surface of the moon, and eyes as blue as a cloudless sky.
Everlong.
Marcus muttered. Cato nodded with his eyes closed.
It didn't matter where the dreams took place. The girl would always end up dying, and every time it happened, I felt a part of myself dying with her. I would be buried underneath a mountain of grief, scorched inside the flames of despair, and strangled by the vengeful claws of guilt. I haven't felt that way since the day I left Nightsong Haven. But somehow, I knew the sorrow I felt wasn't my own. It was as if I felt whatever the boy wanted me to feel. The girl's death always left us behind in a cold and empty void like two orphans who had just lost their last living relative. He would stare at me with eyes that seemed to blame me for the girl's death.
He paused to think for a moment. His face contorted into a frown as if he doubted the validity of his own words.
He would stare at me with eyes that blamed me for having missed the chance of ascending to godhood.
He paused again and nodded, agreeing with himself that the rephrased statement was infinitely closer to the truth.
His face was distant and hollow, but at the same time, so painfully familiar. When I looked at him, it felt like I was staring into a mirror and seeing my true self stare back at me. During the final act of every dream, the boy would reach out his hand and invite me to join him. That gesture never failed to terrify me, and I would always feel an unseen force, like a spine-tingling premonition of imminent disaster that freezes me to my very core, stopping me from accepting the invitation. It's similar to the sensation I get from using my auric techniques, cold and empty, but simultaneously warm and full of love.
A smile crept onto his face as he was concluding his story, but he could sense the worry in the 4 pairs of eyes that were fixed on him. He smoothed his lips back into a flat line.
So if the boy from your dreams is Cain, then who is the girl?
Maya asked, burrowing into Cato's chest for comfort.
Master said that the girl would be his daughter who died a long time ago. Nera Everlong.
Saying her name out loud brought the smile back to his face. Marcus flung his head to the black stallion in surprise, not because the name meant anything to him, but because he heard his sister's heart racing the moment Nera Everlong was mentioned.
Anything bothering you, Maya?
Not at all. Just surprised that the Grandmaster has 2 other children no one ever heard of.
She shifted her eyes to Marcus, telling him to mind his own business.
Why would Cain approach you?
She asked, directing the question to the person she was leaning against.
Master told me that Cain was probably after my aura, but we didn't really get the chance to talk about the topic in depth. However, we now know that Cain and the one Saraki called the Emperor are likely the same person. For some reason, I am of utmost importance to him.
The writer called Esau said that Umbora wasn't ready to be harvested yet.
Marcus said, scratching his beard with a wince.
He must have been talking about your aura, right? What do you suppose they want with it?
I don't know, but I keep thinking about something Jada said before she lost consciousness.
What? About the tree being reborn, you mean?
Raven said, rubbing his sister's back when he sensed her unease at the mention of her master's name.
What is that even supposed to mean? Surely she was delirious at the time.
Tree?
Marcus asked and scoffed.
You mean the one that scratches through the clouds and gives people the ability to manipulate aura with its sap?
Raven let an uneasy chuckle escape his lips.
What? Did I miss something while I was asleep?
The question was met with laughter.
Oh, you didn't miss much,
Marcus said.
We only rode past the giant tree in the middle of the door, and that's visible from every corner of the realm.
No, you haven't been listening,
Cato said through gritted teeth. His voice was cold and humorless.
The tree was taken down ages ago by Ava and a woman called Nyx. And now, the tree is apparently reborn.
If the tree could give people supernatural powers, maybe they would use your aura to feed it.
Rain said timidly and blushed when everyone turned their heads to her in surprise.
Well, it makes sense, doesn't it?
Her cheeks flared crimson red as she tried to make her case.
If the tree is reborn, I imagine it doesn't just magically appear as a gigantic thing that scratches through the clouds all of the sudden. A tree, even as special as this one, needs time and nutrition to grow, right? And the aura you are able to manipulate isn't exactly common.
Rain,
Cato said and heaved a sigh.
Sometimes I wonder where you get your brilliance from.
He smiled and sent her a wink.
That's better than any theory I could come up with.
Shit.
Marcus suddenly said with a closed fist next to his head.
Your fairy tale will have to wait for now. We have company.
Immediately, a heavy tension brought everyone to high alert as they all peered into the distant horizon where they saw a lone traveller atop a grassy hill staring back at them through a monocular. They were allowed to breathe a sigh of relief when it became clear that the man posed no threat. Marcus even chuckled and wondered if that pitiful sight was how he appeared to the 6 riders when they approached him the day before. The man was heavily startled when he realized his presence was acknowledged and even seemed to panic as he frantically swung his head from left to right and back again, desperately searching for a safe place to retreat to. But he couldn't find any, and even if he did, would lack the time to make a run for it. Still, he seemed to entertain the prospect as he was pacing back and forth, arguing with himself in a stressed-out soliloquy.
Hey, you!
Marcus shouted when they arrived at the base of the hill.
No need to be alarmed. We only want to talk.
Then talk!
The man shouted back. He was probably in his late 20s, but had the misfortune of already balding on his crown. His bronze complexion likely meant that he was a citizen from Malachi.
I can hear you just fine from here, so no need to come near me!
He started rummaging through his cart and turned back to them with a spiked mace in his hands.
I mean it! I'm dangerous!
Don't look at me.
Cato said when he noticed Marcus casting a glance at him.
You're the one who wanted to talk.
I was only trying to put him at ease.
Marcus sneered back through clenched jaws.
Good job.
Hey, hey, hey!
The man shouted, accusingly pointing a finger.
What are you two mumbling about? Don't try anything funny now! I am dead serious! The last group of riders that tried to mess with me received the exact same warning! Know that they were wise enough to know not to fuck with any strangers in the Doran, and I suggest you to do the same!
Another group of riders, huh?
Cato said and sucked his teeth.
What?
He yelled at the man who was visibly quivering, even from this distance.
I couldn't hear what you just said!
I said don't fuck with strangers you meet in the Doran!
The man answered in a hysterical shout.
See?
Cato said and turned to his siblings with a chuckle.
Let that be a lesson to all of us.
Helpful as always.
Marcus mumbled.
What's your name?
He yelled at the top of the hill. It remained silent for a moment as the man lowered the weapon that seemed far too dangerous for him to be handling anyway.
Why?
Why not?
The man whispered a few expletives in his native tongue and seemed to direct it at the sky.
You first!
He then shouted.
See? A little diplomacy goes a long way.
Marcus murmured to his side.
My name is Marcus Bloodthorn.
He shouted to gain the man's trust.
Lesson number 2.
Cato said to his siblings again.
Never give out your full name to any random weirdo you meet out in the wilderness.
Raven and Rain rolled their eyes upon hearing the common knowledge that everybody should already know.
Marcus Bloodthorn!
The man shouted and laughed.
The Marcus Bloodthorn!
Sometimes you just need to have faith in people.
Marcus mumbled again and flashed his most charming grin.
The very same! So what's your name, friend?
It turned silent again as the man pondered the question.
Why don't you?
He finally shouted back.
And I gave you my full name. It's only polite to return the courtesy. Why don't you what?
Why don't you suck my cock?
Cato almost fell from his horse laughing, but he also lost balance because the person he was leaning against suddenly disappeared.
All right, funny man.
Maya said, having reappeared behind the man on the hilltop with a dagger pressed between his lower cheeks.
We are kind of in a hurry here, so unless you want a cold blade shoved up your rectum, you better save the jokes for your mates at the tavern, yeah?
The man instantly dropped the mace, raised his hands to the sky and audibly swallowed a big boulder down his throat.
Whoa, whoa, whoa! Easy there, miss. I was only trying to lighten the mood. I meant no offense. Truly!
Maybe you should have listened to your own words of caution and not mess around with strangers you come across in the Doran,
she quietly whispered in the man's ear, her dagger slowly puncturing the fabric of his trousers. The man was shivering and began whimpering when he felt his lower cheeks slapping against the cold steel.
please don't hurt me.
He sobbed.
I will tell you anything you want to know.
Good. Now first things first. What is your name, and why were you spying on us?
I wasn't spying on you, I swear.
Just answer the question.
The man shakily nodded his head.
Yes, of course, it's Miro.
He stammered, but realized from the pointy tip kissing his flesh that she wasn't satisfied with only half an answer.
Bunrahawk!
He hastily added, half squealing.
My name is Miro Bunrahawk!
He immediately slumped to the ground and curled up into a fetal position when Maya finally retracted her hand.
Hey, Marcus!
She shouted down the hill.
Did you hear that?
Yeah.
Marcus grumbled as they slowly made their climb to the top.
Isn't she just the best?
Cato melted and wrapped his arms around his stallion's neck in a loving embrace.
Yeah.
Wait,
Miro said with his face halfway buried inside a shrub. He sprang up to his knees and rubbed the greens from his forehead.
you mean to say that he actually is Marcus Bloodthorn?
Yup.
She answered and stretched out her hand.
Maya.
Miro looked up and instantly opened his mouth with a gasp. His pupils dilated in amazement.
Maya Bloodthorn?
Sure.
She said and grabbed his hand for a shake when he seemed too shocked to do so himself.
And who is he?
Miro said, pointing at the horse-hugger who had a similar skin tone as he did.
Ayohiso Senesi Malak?
Not sure yet.
Cato answered dryly in the common tongue. He got off his horse and squatted down in front of Miro, who immediately shriveled back into submission.
You mentioned coming across another group of riders. What did they look like?
Marcus joined in next to Cato and hunched over the whimpering Malak.
Answer him truthfully if you value your eternal soul. Why don't you suck? Ma. Cock.
Please forgive me, Lord Marcus.
Miro grovelled with his head lowered to the grass. He squeezed his nose to shield himself from the awful smell, but did so inconspicuously as to not offend Marcus any further.
It was foolish of me to deceive you,
he added in a nasal voice.
I don't know,
Raven said, finally making his way to the hilltop together with Rain.
I thought it was pretty funny.
Hilarious!
Cato said with a genuine grin.
Hilarious.
Marcus repeated. Miro raised his head with an apologetic chuckle, but seemed completely flabbergasted at the sight of Raven.
Malamala. Is that?
Just answer the question before I start using your cheeks as a sheath again.
Maya said.
Yes, of course, my lady.
Miro bounced to his feet and brushed off the dirt in an attempt to come across dignified.
They all wore white hooded cloaks.
I knew it.
Marcus grunted.
Why didn't they kill you?
Oh, I'm sure they could have if they wanted to, my lord, but their leader said they had bigger fish to fry.
The one with the woolly beard, you mean?
Miro raised an eyebrow and started laughing uncomfortably.
No, my lord, I mean the pretty boy everybody has been looking for all over the nation for the past 2 weeks or so.
He ran over to his horse cart and ploughed through his inventory, all the while moping about his rotten luck.
Here,
he said and handed Marcus a piece of paper.
this was the guy who led the hooded riders.
Marcus snickered and showed the rest what was drawn on the leaflet.
He's not that pretty.
Cato grumbled to himself and took a few menacing steps toward Miro.
No, naturally.
Miro hastily agreed.
Everything is relative, of course. I meant that he is pretty only compared to myself.
He flinched and cowered when Cato swung an arm around his neck.
Relax, Hiso. We're not here to hurt you. We only want to know where you're headed, and then we'll be on our merry way again. We too have bigger fish to fry.
Where are you headed?
Cato tightened his grip, but not necessarily with the intention to hurt the poor fellow.
Didn't I ask you first?
Miro turned his head to Rain, who was absently brushing the mane of her grey mare.
I was on my way to Vicaris, Mr.
You're not getting my name.
Cato said icily.
And keep your eyes on me. What business do you have in Moralis?
Well, you know, just business. I'm only a simple merchant trying to make an honest living. There will be great festivities in a few weeks' time all over Miralis.
Cato lit up a smile and released Miro from his clutch. Even though he hadn't been to Moralis in 5 years, he still knew that there was no nationwide celebration around that time of year.
This pretty boy,
He said and snorted.
was he chained to one of the horses?
What?
Miro exclaimed and chuckled nervously.
Didn't you hear what I just said? He was the one who gave the orders. Of course he wasn't chained.
Were any of their captives chained?
Marcus asked, still finding it hard to believe how much he had misjudged the situation.
My lord,
Miro began cautiously.
there were no captives at all, only 6 hooded riders and the pretty boy who wore a coat of the Malaki army.
Where did you meet them?
Right here, actually. Truth is that I've been too scared to move on ever since the encounter. I followed their departure through my monocular and have been staring in that direction for a whole day. That's when I saw you, your sister, and your servants, my lord. And here we are.
And here we are,
Marcus said with a wide grin.
with me and my servants.
So if you came across the same riders as I did, am I correct to assume that you have dealt with them?
Miro pointed at the wrapped-up corpse on the back of the chestnut stallion.
And by the look of things, I'm guessing the pretty boy ain't so pretty anymore.
Oh, Lord Marcus has dealt with them all right.
Cato said, smiling his most charming smile.
So, you can continue your travels without having to worry about them anymore, Miro Bunra Hawk. And while you're in Vicaris, please tell Queen Rosa that she can choke on a generous serving of disease-ridden testicles.
Miro flinched and glanced at Marcus for clarification, but was only answered with a heavy sigh.
Listen, mister, I don't know who you are or what your problem is, but in Malachi, we tend to have more dignity than to speak ill of those who have passed.
Cato dove onto Miro and grabbed him by the collar with both hands.
What did you say?
It's true!
Miro whimpered.
We don't speak ill of the dead!
Queen Rosa is dead?
Raven and Rain exclaimed in unison.
I'm telling the truth! It is the end of an era!
Miro said and struggled to break free from Cato's hold.
The end of an era.
Cato muttered.
The news arrived in Rokan 3 days ago. That's the whole reason I've been packing my wares for a trip to Moralis. The coronation of the new king and queen will be in a couple of weeks' time. Thousands of people from across the realm will visit Vicaris and pay respect to the new rulers. I'm sure Onirar is sending a delegation as well.
And who will sit on the throne?
Cato asked, releasing the Malaki merchant with a shove. He turned around and stared at the horizon in the west, as if he would see the Meralesian court if he stared hard and long enough. Miro hurried to his cart again, and shortly after returned with another sheet of paper in his hand.
Queen Willow.
Cato read out loud, and immediately felt Maya's eyes burning through him. He looked up and responded with a slight twist of his lips before returning his eyes to the sheet of paper. He snickered, crumpled the leaflet into a ball, and shoved it back into Miro's hand.
We have to go.
He said to his party and urgently climbed on the black stallion with a grim look on his face.
Wait, what else does it say?
Rain asked, obviously still very much interested in the affairs of her former nation.
Who will be the king of Moralis?
Cato turned to the grey mare, but his eyes skipped over Rain and went to Raven instead.
Jackdaw Blackshaw.